Welcome to the Dynasty Pulse on FSAN and the Undroppables and on terrestrial radio 101.5, talking West Tennessee. This is the finest collection of knowers of ball in the industry. There's stiff competition out there, but we're stiffer. It's been a long week, but we're rejuvenized, so lock in. We're about to wild out and hammer down to get you bricked up. I'm bigz, with me in the Hall of Ball Knowledge, my clowns from the same circus. I got Grindberg, I got Schultze, Chev is down there, Coach Retzlaff in the building. Let's get this thing started. Allez, monsieur! Once again to the Dynasty Pulse. We are talking Crossfire. We're going to be probing each other. This is deep value territory, rounds 9 through 13. It's in startup draft. We're going to get into some player talk. How you guys doing? Oh, by the way, I saw this Lonely Island video where they were being interviewed, and they started doing what we do, and they were like crossing their legs over the same way, back and forth, and they were all doing it together. It was fun.
It was in unison, if you will.
Yeah, how you guys doing?
Doing good, man. Chev, how you doing, man?
Oh, man. Well. Funny that you should ask me that. I'm doing great, brother.
He asked you that.
Coach, what's going on, man?
Hey, man, any day on this side of the dirt, brother, is a good day for me. So, yeah, everything's great.
I love that. Great stuff. And Schultze, what about you, man?
We are here distracting ourselves with fantasy football.
Absolutely. And we're here to get to work this week. And last week,
how I am?
bigz, you were the intro guy. You know we're good. Okay. How are you, bigz?
I can't complain. Actually, I could, but I'm not going to.
Yeah, well, you could have drafted Chase Brown and then you'd be complaining. But we are here, and that's what we're talking about. We're talking about, a startup draft. And last week we got into the meat, the juicy meat of your startup drafts. And we dug through rounds 4 through 8, and we unearthed some values that are going to win you some titles, not Twitter polls. So
we're duggers.
Yeah, exactly. Schultze, you kicked things off in round 4 with Travion Henderson, a dual threat back, league-winning upside. Chev followed it up in round 5 with my guy, Chase Brown. I followed it up in round 6 with Jackson Dart. bigz, came back and forth over the last year on Tyreek Hill, but he's calling him at wide receiver 39 as a value. So I love that call. And Coach wrapped up round 8 with a trio of Josh Downs, Jerry Jeudy, and Devontae Adams that were criminally late in the window here. So this week we're going to dig deep into rounds 9 through 13, where the lights are dimmer, the hit rates are lower, but the edge is even sharper. So each host will again lock in one round and deliver one player per round. And we're going to start things off with Schultze in the Crossfire section. Let's hit it, Schultze.
Okay, Crossfire, engage. Last week, hit you with Travion Henderson. I had a lot of Hot Rod vibes where they were all trying to
Gods of War.
I love it. Last week I hit with Travion Henderson, and Mike alluded to he's got that league-winning upside. I'm going to come back in round 9 range here and hit you with the guy that, I'm going to be honest, he doesn't have league-winning upside, but I think he's a great value to your team in a startup draft in this range, and that's DeAndre Swift. Now, on the Dynasty rankings we are using as our resource here, he is around running back 27 in the Dynasty Startup rankings, and to me, that's just too low, especially for a dude who's just been very consistent his whole career. He hasn't exploded like people wanted him to, and people expected him to coming out of college. And he does get a little bit of injury knock, which I think is misguided considering he's played 13 or plus games every single year. So he's had a couple nicks here and there, but never any substantial time. In the consistency page, man, he's been between running back 15 and 21 every single season of his career. So if we're just going to go off of past performance and production, this guy's going to be a solid running back 2, and you're getting him at a running back 3 price. He came over to the Bears here, ran for almost 1,000 yards last year, 6 touchdowns. And if we're, as a collective, looking at this Ben Johnson addition as a huge upgrade for the Bears offense scheme-wise, and we expect the offense as a whole to take a leap, well, then why isn't DeAndre Swift going to improve on those numbers? If this offense is going to improve, I think we could see double-digit touchdowns out of him. And not to mention, he's going to give you 40 to 50 receptions. Like that's just what this guy does. And you can kind of miss me with the Roschon Johnson, Kyle Monungai stuff. Like, a lot of people love to bring up the Gibbs and Monty situation in Detroit, but you got to have 2 players of caliber to pull that off. And I was pretty high on Roschon coming out, but if Roschon was as good as we want him to be, we would have seen more of that by now, in my opinion. And Monungai is a 7th-round pick. So I think we're looking at a DeAndre Swift workhorse situation here for the next couple seasons. And I think he's like I said, not league winning upside, but he's a pretty safe pick here who's going to return you higher value than what you're investing.
Schulte, this is one of the most fantastic things that you've ever said to me.
Yes.
Short of last week when we got off air and I told you the story about how I sniped this one guy and it made me feel really good because that's what you did to me in Grindberg Startup. Yeah, DeAndre Swift is incredible. Is an incredible value. Let me start there. So we're talking about a guy. I'm looking at his per game averages in every single season of his career, and it's never been lower than 12.5 points, which was 2023 with, his last year, I guess, or excuse me, the year with the Eagles, right? So
Yep.
Ironically enough, he gets the best offensive line in football. The only time he's ever rushed for 1,000 yards, has his lowest points per game because even then they don't throw the ball to running backs. He gets 39 receptions. He's the cheapest workhorse you can buy that you can actually bank on production. We don't know who's going to be the guy in Jacksonville. That's why, there's a lot more uncertainty around Travis Etienne. But for at least this year, now I would caution making more than making a multi-year bet on DeAndre Swift because of the fact that they can move on from him for so cheap after 2025. I think it's only like 2.25 or 3.25 in dead cap. If the Bears don't perform to expectation, I don't expect for him to stay. But if they're better, if they take the step forward that we think, then DeAndre Swift could be another cheap option, and then we'll have another excuse built in that, they're going to add somebody in the draft, so you're still going to be able to profit. But this is 295 guaranteed touches with no backfield competition. If you think Kyle Monungai is a true threat, guys, what are we doing here? In all seriousness. Kyle Monungai is this year's Bucky Irving. Okay, cool. Well, we can rewind this in a few months, in December, and then look at me and laugh if I'm wrong, because that's exactly what I'll do is be like, man, sometimes I just don't know nothing about nothing. So,
well, one of the things to keep in mind is where DeAndre Swift came from, and that was Detroit Lions. And who is the head coach of the Chicago Bears?
Correct.
And that is the former offensive coordinator of the Detroit Lions, who was able to shepherd DeAndre Swift through the best years of his running back abilities. So
his first year, he was 13.7 points per game with Ben Johnson. And everybody assumes that Ben Johnson is the one that jettisoned him off to the Eagles. I think that was false. Ben Johnson wouldn't have had that type of clout as a first-time play caller, right? So now we get to see him again, and he's going to have a 3-down workload. Roschon might get some inside the 5 touches, but I doubt it, just based on the fact that they didn't use him at all last year. And so we have a guy who he's familiar with as a play caller. We have a guy who has handled 295 touches. We got all 5 of the Bears starters on the offensive line find themselves inside of the top 30 at the position, at each of their respective positions. And you have one of the most creative play callers in the game stepping into this role with familiarity to DeAndre Swift. So to everything that you said, Schulte, I concur wholeheartedly. And I was happy to add some context to the picture. Biggs, I cede the floor to you, brother.
I said what I said.
And I stand by it. All right, Chev, we're getting into round 10 here. And you've been talking about this guy quite a bit this offseason. I went as bold to say he's one of your flag plans, but you downplay that. So I want to hear a little bit more about your guy and why round 10 is the perfect spot for him.
Yeah, round 10, perfect spot for my guy, because in any sort of tight end premium startup, he's an afterthought. And I've been clocking this since Jeremiah put me on it for the news desk way back when. Tucker Kraft in the 10th round. We're talking about a guy who was 21st at the position in targets, but finished 7th in yards, finished 7th in touchdowns with 7. He's only second to George Kittle in yards per target, amongst tight ends with at least 50 targets and yards per target. That only trailed George Kittle at 10.88 yards per target. He was in second in yards per reception to George Kittle. He led in yards after the catch per reception in the entire for the tight end position. And then you go back to the beginning of the year and you hear, the end of the year, and you hear the beat reporter or whoever it was ask Matt LaFleur if he could see Tucker Kraft growing into a Travis Kelce or George Kittle type of role. So with that being the case, like, he unequivocally said yes, he's a force with the ball in his hands. That is backed up by actual advanced analytics that you have access to. Like, and then you watch him play football. It's like, oh no, this dude's really, really, really good. So we just have kind of an Aaron Jones and Jamal Williams type of situation just playing out at the tight end position. I think that he's in for a huge role. I think that everything that we could say about the passing game in San Francisco to a lesser extent applies in Green Bay. You've got a bunch of receivers. We don't know who's going to be the primary target earner of the wide receivers, but you've got a guy in Tucker Kraft and George Kittle at the tight end position that's going to be a reliable target. So yeah, Tucker Kraft is my guy here. I love scooping him up at the value that he's currently at. And so I really, really like the fact that Tucker Kraft has a chance to really break out. And he's at a price point where you can have some earlier round insurance, but you can also get Tucker Kraft later in drafts as that upside yin and yang. Shout out to friend of the show, Andrew Cooper, for the yin yang tight end theory.
Love it. And you know what? Remember, like in 2023 when he started as the backup to Luke Musgrave, they were both kind of like drafted the same year. Musgrave had that pedigree, so people were higher on him. But, he played 92% of the snaps in the 6 games that he played that year, averaging 10 PPR points per game. That was starter level production. And now he is remained the primary starter last year throughout 2024, consistent snap share, 85% of the snaps across the season. He ranked 15 among the tight ends in points per game in 2024. Not the best, but, I see what Chev sees here. Exceptional yards after the catch. That is, George Kittle-esque, average 9.3 yards after the catch, 1.5 yards better than any other tight end last year. I love that upside here, and maybe they spread the ball out, but we're going to have this situation where Tucker Kraft's going to be just a reliable guy that you can just plug and play probably every week. Good for, 4 to 5 targets, and he's got that touchdown upside and that yards after the catch, which is going to up his yardage there. So I really like this call there, Chev. Anybody else got anything to say about Tucker? Anybody against it? No. We're all.
The parallels are there between 49ers offense and the Packers offense, the way they're set up. And then it's cheaper arbitrage, as Chev was saying, Kraft to Kittle. And there's less risk there, so you're getting the benefit of a lower ADP. And the beauty is a cheat code, and Andrew Cooper will talk about it. Theo Greminger will talk about it. If you're a top 2 weapon in your offense, in a even prolific offense, we believe Jordan Love will throw more in 2025 because it's kind of coming out like, hey, the injury really put him back. and then they relied on Josh Jacobs. Not like Josh Jacobs will disappear, but you have a setup prime for Kraft to be the number 2 receiver in Green Bay, or maybe the 1A, because there's that flattened exposure between Golden, Reed, Romeo Doubs, and Dontavian Wicks. And there's a diva in that wide receiver room. My 2 guesses is going to come up of Jaden Reed or Romeo Doubs. Remember, Romeo Doubs had contract detrimental to the team last year and didn't quite like some things. Jaden Reed's agent earlier in the offseason reached out to say, hey, what gives with Matthew Golden? So there's a diva in that Packers receiver room. One of them has to emerge. What I think is going to happen is Matthew Golden is going to ascend. Tucker Kraft, since he's no drama, no fuss, will be there over the seams. He's second in so many different categories, and he had 2 tight end 1 weeks last year overall. And I think it's just going to be the Golden and Kraft show. And then as much as I want Jaden Reed to hit, Romeo Doubs, somebody's going to be the odd man out, and it's going to narrow it even more.
Consolidate.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
And, he's going to be a safety blanket who could get those yards. So I love that call. Chev, now, another call that I love there, Schulte, is our sponsor, where we work for here at the Fantasy Sports Advice Network. We got a lot on the go right now. We are the main sponsor at the Fantasy Football Expo coming in Canton the first weekend of August. It's going to be a great time. So fans, industry experts are going to be there. It's a great time. Be sure to get there. We are a lead sponsor. We got the merch store, but let's hear from our sponsor, Schulte.
Okay.
We are here. FantasySportsAdvice.com, offering the best fantasy sports social media platform. Why join endless Discord communities or the trolls of Reddit? Fantasy Sports Advice is a community designed to help you win with 24/7 support. Go to FantasySportsAdvice.com and become a pro member for unlimited access. Again, go to FantasySportsAdvice.com today.
Do that. And we're going to get into my guy here in round 11, who is another tight end. And we haven't really had a lot of controversy here on this episode like we did last week. We had some fire happening. So maybe this might trigger, maybe it won't. Maybe the later picks will. But hopefully we get some excitement here. But I'm going to talk it in round 11, a tight end that I'm going to be targeting, especially in, these 0.5, 0.75 PPR kind of leagues where these premium tight ends are sought after, especially in these later rounds. And, for me, Mason Taylor, he stands out as a great
crazy.
No, I'm not. And you're crazier than I am, Biggs. And we know that already because he was on the forecast, forecasting some exceptional outcomes here and potentially an outcome for Mason Taylor finishing as a top 10 tight end in 2025, but I might not be that close, but I think he's got great production that's matched some of the, first day prospects. And he had some pretty stiff competition, if you know what I mean, at LSU with Brian Thomas Jr. and Malik Neighbors, inconsistent quarterback play. But in 2024, those weapons were gone and Taylor's numbers improved noticeably. He was 96th percentile in separation rate among tight ends, signaling a player who creates opportunity, the kind that often is overlooked. He's got a great pedigree. We know that already. He's got great size, blocking ability as well, may need to be polished, but that's an area ripe for growth. And he joins a New York Jets offense where he may lead that tight end right away, right out of the gate, but also, he might be the number 2 target in that offense. Well, maybe number 3 when you factor in Breece Hall, but there's only 3 options there, and it's Garrett Wilson, Breece Hall, and my guess is Mason Taylor. 3 seasons at LSU, full-time starter at tight end, so he's got that experience that maybe is that maturity level that we're going to be looking for these tight ends to explode year 1. I said that 96th percentile separation rate. He had 11 deep targets in 2024, only 4 that were catchable. He's got big playability, 707 receiving yards since 2022, so he's got a lot of upside here. And the new Jets OC coach top NFL tight ends like Hawkinson and Laporta. So Mason Taylor in round 11 is a late round flyer I'm taking, and a lot of sharps are getting him now. I've seen him go in rounds 10 as a first tight end on roster. So people see the upside. It's sneaky here because he could be a starter right out of the gate here. And that's what we're looking for in the tight end position, especially in like a tight end premium kind of league.
Yeah. You know about me and how firmly my feet are planted on the Mason Taylor train. The bottom line is this: when you talk to Koopa Fiasco, when you talk to Andrew, and he starts talking about tight ends that are going to earn their share, you want a tight end who's going to be at least the second target getter on that offense. Now, with all due respect to shout out NorCal, shout out Sacramento, shout out Del Oro High School, Stone Smart, who was a UDFA, Mason Taylor has second round draft capital at the tight end position. He is one of this new era of big slot tight ends who's not going to be playing in line. He has a path to targets. The people that he's lining up against in target share are Garrett Wilson. So of course there's your alpha. And then you have Josh Reynolds. You have Alan Lazard. Are those guys going to be competing with a second round draft pick for targets? Now, it might not be a high volume offense. It might not be a high volume passing offense, but you have Justin Fields with a history of an alpha receiver and a Cole Kmet top 10 tight end finish. Mason Taylor, I've made this flag plant before on a bunch of different platforms. He will finish as a top 10 tight end in 2025.
Love it.
It's cool. This could not have worked out better how the show sheet is set up. Chev going with Tucker Kraft, because Mason Taylor, for me, when he popped out, my comparison pre-NFL draft was Tucker Kraft for Mason Taylor, some of the traits that I see. So it's kind of neat that you've got a guy who is further along the path in Tucker Kraft. And then, of course, Mason Taylor. Who can forget that gauntlet drill that Taylor showed off? He's just got an excellent build, and he's got that pedigree with his father. I am absolutely in on Mason Taylor, so I really love that pick, Mike. I'm having a little difficulty getting in on 2025 Mason Taylor, but I think part of that is because we have somebody like Tucker Kraft who we're just scooping up as more of that sure thing. You alluded to that volume. So I think for me it's a little more dynasty, but you can't go wrong with somebody like Mason Taylor in the event that there's the truncated, consolidated Breece Hall, Garrett Wilson from Fields, and somebody else is there. I think nobody has a better case than somebody like Mason Taylor.
And the opportunity there, right? I mean, it's there right away potentially with being that target, and we know that if he can get into the lineup, then his stock is going to rise right away. So round 11 this time next year, we're not going to be talking about Mason Taylor in that range. We're probably going to be talking him in rounds 8 or 9 because he's established himself in that offense as a young guy with the pedigree and that yak ability that we talk about here. So that's kind of where I'm planting is like the increase of value down the line. And I think he's got some upside here in 2025 as well with opportunity. And that's what, some of these guys need with that elite athleticism. So I love it.
Even as a rookie, if you go back and you look at the rookie seasons of Sam Laporta and Brock Bowers, who had huge breakout rookie seasons, what is something that they all share in common? Well, Sam Laporta really didn't have a whole lot of target competition in Detroit. And the competition for Brock Bowers was really Jacoby Myers and Devontae Adams. That's significantly more target competition than you have in New York. Also, Bowers came out in a season with two very, very mid to bad quarterbacks in Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell, and he still had the rookie season that he did. So if you look at everything on balance, Mason Taylor has an even better opportunity than Brock Bowers did last year, and Brock Bowers set the world on fire. So I'm fully all in flag planted on Mason Taylor.
Love it.
Love it.
All right, Biggs. Who is your guy in round 12 here, man?
Well, I'm going to keep the tight end train rolling, and I'm going to talk about a guy that I am drafting ahead of both Tucker Kraft and Mason Taylor. But I don't have to because his value is so much lower. We're talking in the 12th round. We're talking in the 125 to 145 range. I'm talking about Mandrews, baby. Last year, Mark Andrews entered the season after being in an automobile accident, and you could tell that things weren't right with him from the get-go. By week 4, he was on waiver wires. The man has one non-top 10 finish in the last couple of years, and that was due to injury. And then he comes back, and what does he do? He starts to flounder a little bit. So everybody's like, oh, he's 28 years old. We're out on him. They dropped him. I picked him up off waivers, people. And then what did he do? He went out and he averaged 12 points per game in the last 13 games of the season. 12 points per game at tight end would have put him in a 17-game season as the tight end 2. Now, if you want to play that game, you can say, well, George Kittle averaged more points per game, and so George Kittle would have been the tight end, whatever. He would have finished higher than Andrews. And that's true, and I'll give you that. But we're talking about a guy who, after a very slow start of the season and winding up on waiver wires, finished as the tight end 5 in PPR scoring. And if you have a tight end premium, that's an even better situation. Now, some of the guys that are going in that range, the aforementioned Mason Taylor, Evan Ingram, I don't know how invested I am in Evan Ingram at this point, making the change, going to Denver and all that stuff. David Njoku, I would take David Andrews or Mark Andrews over. Kyle Pitts, I'm taking Mark Andrews over. Yes. Dalton Kincaid, I'm taking Mark Andrews over, right? It's a no-brainer. And if you're getting him in the 12th round, you can do a lot of plays in the 10th and 11th and get high-scoring wide receiver ones on your team, and then back them up with Andrews, who's going to fill in that tight end position with serious points. So he's my dude.
Hey, I love that because in the player profiler gauntlet draft, I punted tight end very much, and I applied a lot of everything that you said with that logic. So it feels good that there's somebody else who has my thought process there. That could be a bad thing, but for right now, it feels amazing. And for Mark Andrews, 11 tight end 1 weeks last year, tight end 7 in fantasy points per game overall. He was a tight end 6, and this was like a slouch year for him. He had, remember, Bradley Stalder had the excellent car accident analysis for us. And
Perfect.
Mark Andrews had that start that just wasn't so sharp. And we love Isaiah Likely, but ADOT for tight ends, number 1 last year for Mark Andrews. 3rd in deep targets, 2nd in target quality rating, 8th in red zone targets, 4th in slot snaps. There's a number 1 in touchdowns with 11. So for a guy who's, I think a lot of his sin is that drop pass because people wanted Team Lamar versus Josh Allen for MVP, but also people want to see Lamar Jackson make it to that next level and get a Super Bowl ring. And that feeling of what happened there's a vividness bias that it's rare that it carries over into the fantasy community, but people want to push out Mark Andrews based on a lot of that. So great pick there to go and get Mark Andrews in that range. Absolutely. And like you say, that's the rest of the team.
That's great to have that become the narrative because, like you said, he was 4th in slot routes or slot snaps. Over 50% of the time he lined up in the slot, not as an inline tight end. That's pretty huge. But when you want to talk about Lamar, who was the number 1 tight end in terms of quarterback rating per target in the NFL? Mark Andrews. He gave Lamar Jackson a 140.9 quarterback rating per target. He was 5th in contested catch rate. He was 1st in fantasy points per target and 2nd in fantasy points per route run. So when you start digging into the deeper analytics, it even presents a bigger picture. And I love playoff football because people are out on Sam Darnold, people are out on Mark Andrews, just because things like that happen, and you just scoop that value up all summer long.
Yeah.
Hey, check this out. Ravens 31% of the time are in 12 personnel, and they were 1st in EPA in that personnel grouping as well. So you shouldn't be worried about the fact that Isaiah Likely's there as well.
I mean,
Isaiah Likely is worried about Zay Flowers. Oh,
yeah.
Sorry. I didn't mean to say that.
Red flag there. Yeah. No, I mean, there's a lot of layering here that we gotta unfold. But I mean, the key here is like we're talking about rounds 11, 12, and 13 right now being tight end rounds. Essentially, we all pick them. So if you do decide to miss out on, a Bowers or a McBride, there's a ton of value later on here that I'm seeing, because guys that you could pick as a flyer in a contender team, like a Mark Andrews, who's going to get you points right away. You got a guy like Mason Taylor who could potentially hit this year, but his value will rise. And then Chev's guy, a lot of upside there as well. So we've got a lot of tight ends here in these rounds, and there's probably a couple more we could throw in there. So know that, in that bunch there, this is kind of probably the tight end sweet spot. There might have been a dead zone in the middle of the startup, but here we go on the tight end rounds. Anything to follow up with that, guys, at all?
No, I mean, Jeremiah stole all the good talking points about how awesome Mark Andrews is and how uniquely he's used. And bigz just picking Mark Andrews made me so sad because it's such a good pick. And I kind of wish that I would have done that now.
All right.
It's good. It's good.
Well,
job.
he wasn't my first and he wasn't my second.
Was he your last? Everything?
Yeah, because I settled.
You never forget your first.
I'll say he wasn't first, so he was obviously last.
So who was my first, Coach?
Oh, well, it wasn't a tight end, but he's got a tight end. It's Lan Larison.
No. It's your guy.
No. Because he sniped his guy in the
Oh, that's right. That's right. Yeah. Sorry.
That was some quick thinking right there. I love it.
Yeah. So for me, it's Calvin Ridley, and Chev is probably going to black out right now, and it's wonderful. For me, round 13, it's Calvin Ridley. Dynasty Startup in redraft, Best Ball Streets underdog. I just peeked. It's round 5 for Calvin Ridley, but in the Dynasty Streets, it's way different. And based on these rankings that we have for round 13, I look back at a startup that I did earlier in the offseason. Chev was in that building. That's when I sniped him on RJ Harvey and Brashard Smith. And I got Calvin Ridley in round 13. So this is an accurate price point in Dynasty. You might have to shave up a little bit more because the word is getting out. But here we go. Calvin Ridley is this year's Terry McLaurin. He's going in the same range as Terry last season. Gamers are fearful that Ridley will disappoint. Ridley was second in explosive plays last year, 20 yards or more at 22. Hello, Cam Ward. Back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons. He's not dust. Calvin Ridley, first in air yards at over 1,800. Number 1 in unrealized air yards. 4th in air yards, share at 44%. 5th in A-dot. Hello, Will Levis, just stinking up the joint. 3rd in deep targets at 32. Ridley gets a Cam Ward QB upgrade. Calvin Ridley, what's the knock on him? It's a non-linear career. He had the gambling suspension when he was recovering from injury. He started his NFL career late or on a track where, hey, AARP at 24 for RJ Harvey right now. So God knows, don't tell the children about Calvin Ridley, how he came into the league. And now he's old, Calvin Ridley, nearing 31 years of age. It is now or never for Calvin Ridley. And am in it to win it. Sign me up. Calvin Ridley, Cam Ward, getting all these great reports about Cam Ward, and he's got like this Kobe Bryant work ethic where he's getting up very early, first one in, last one out, and it's not hyperbole. And people are sleeping on the Tennessee Titans in 2025, and they need to wake up. We've had prior shows where we went off on, if I wanted to keep going on the tight ends, I'd go on to Chigokonkwo, but in this pocket, I cannot, bigz is there with me on Calvin Ridley. So Calvin Ridley, this year's Terry McLaurin. I've been saying it since April, prior to people doing their taxes. All right, Ben here.
Yeah, dude. This is, I am in total lockstep with you on Ridley. He takes the time off. We watch him come back, post back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons, like you mentioned. He did it with 2 separate quarterbacks in 2 different offensive schemes. So we shouldn't be concerned about that he's going to play with the rookie this year. And if anything, like you mentioned, it's a plus because Will Levis sucks. Calvin Ridley's catchable target rate last year was 59.2%, 97th among wide receivers. 97
territory.
So, you mentioned the air yards, the unrealized air yards. This dude just wasn't given a fighting chance. And we know in the Callahan offense here, they're going to keep pushing it. And this is your guy deep. He's proven it in the last 2 seasons that he can still make it happen. And yeah, this is insane value. When you're looking at the other receivers on the board, like, I don't see another dude who has 1,000-yard, seasons on his belt. Like, the value's silly here. You got to scoop it up.
Hey, Chev, are you levitating? Tell us which cloud you're on.
Space cadets will study how high I am on this tape right now for decades. I can't. I'm super pessimistic when it comes to the teams that I root for. So when something good happens, or when like other people are excited about things, or you don't look at me like I have 3 heads when I talk about how good the passing attack could be, because I do think Cam Ward is one of them ones. And on top of that, we know Calvin Ridley is still one of the most precise route runners and separators that the league has seen, and with incredible deep speed. Now we're adding Cam Ward, who was one of the most accomplished deep passers of 20+ yard completions of 20+ yards at the collegiate level, with that howitzer of an arm. So yes, I expect the target quality rating to improve drastically for Calvin Ridley. I expect him to finally capitalize on those air yards. I don't feel like it's out of the question in any way, shape, form, or fashion for Calvin Ridley to finish with 13 or 1,400 yards and 8 or 9 touchdowns. So him going in the range that he's going in right now, if you're in win now mode, this is the time to acquire Calvin Ridley, in my opinion, just because the floor we've seen with absolute dog water quarterback play is 1,000 yards and, 2 to 3 touchdowns, if not 5 to 7. He had 8 with Trevor Lawrence. So we're looking at that, and then we're looking at the opportunity for Calvin Ridley to actually have plus quarterback play, where we're able to get him the ball in situations where the ball hasn't come his way, and he's one of the most dynamic run after catch guys, in addition to being one of the best separators in the league. Yes, this could turn into 13 to 1,400 yards just on the quality of quarterback play alone. Let alone the fact that like you have a really good play caller, a guy who's been around some high level quarterback play. So he'll know how to manage Cam Ward in those situations. But a lot of times you don't put the harness on a racehorse. You just let him run. We've seen this is a Cam Ward thing. Cam Ward, talking trash to Jeff Simmons, Big Jeff, one of the scariest human beings in the entire NFL, talking trash to him, getting the play call from Brian Callahan, processing it all, then calling it back to the offense the right way. He's just got the stuff that you talk about quarterbacks having. It's just like, I don't know what to explain. It's different, but there's just something different. And I can't be convinced otherwise. So I'm really excited about everything that you guys just said. And Calvin Ridley is going to be the most profitable beneficiary from just having a good quarterback behind center.
It's crazy because you mentioned the floor being, the 1,000 yards, couple touchdowns with terrible quarterback play. And that brought him to wide receiver 28 last year. And he's going off at like 53 right now. So his floor is significantly higher than his draft stock right now. If we're even looking at marginal improvement on the air yard stuff and the target quality, which I think it's going to be more than marginal. If it's even a marginal upgrade, to the moon, man.
I mean, it's top 10 to 15 upside, and no one seems to care.
Yeah, it's criminally undervalued right now, unless something happens as far as an injury goes. He's aging, so maybe that's baked into his price right now, but it's still crazy value, and it's incredible to see. And one thing that just happened in the last little while that I want to get your temperature checked on here, guys, because it's a tough one to swallow, especially if you just got out of a Dynasty Start-up. And I'm going to talk to someone like Chev, who you picked Jonnu Smith in, I think it might've been the 8th round in our Dynasty Start-up, thinking, being in Miami and, the way he finished last year, Miami's, game plan, Now he goes back to, Pittsburgh, Arthur Smith, Pat Fryermuth there. What are we doing with Jonnu Smith? Like, are we panicking right now?
Yes.
Yes. We are panicking right now. So, especially
there's no reason to be calm right now. There's zero reason to be calm. I honestly, Mike, I didn't mean to cut you off, but the answer to the question, if you're not panicking, it's because you're not paying attention to football right now. You're catching up on Real Housewives or House Husbands of Hollywood.
Love
whatever
Island.
it is you do. Yeah, Love Island. That's it. That's the one. Love Island. So you're busy watching Love Island. I'm over here in shambles because we're talking about Jonnu Smith going from being what we want in the second target in an offense to being a part of Arthur Smith's clown show. So we've seen him. Arthur Smith's going to come out in 14 personnel this year, or 4 personnel, just no backs. I mean, no receivers, 4 tight ends. I could not. I was really, really bummed when I heard that they were thinking about trading him. And then you should have seen my expression when I saw that it was the Steelers that were coming after him. I was irrationally upset. So
it was sorry.
Go, bigz. I want to hear your
I was going to say it was like when you have guys in your home leagues or whatever that make trades just to make trades. It didn't help either team. It sunk, like it was a lose trade.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was like, hey man, I got this utensil here, but it's double-sided. Want to use it? And it's like, no, you guys can just not do that at all. But instead, they're both using it, and now we're stuck watching. Like, hey, I wonder how Arthur Smith's gonna use Jonnu Smith this year. I really, really hope that it turns into 70 usable targets from Aaron Rodgers. I mean,
that's
how
the
gross
big
does
thing.
that feel? You just sit there with that for a minute while I go back into my quantum of Chevis and reflect on the happier times of 2024 with Jonnu Smith.
It's such a fall from grace because you're drafted him, like you mentioned, in the 8th round.
Yeah.
And at the time you're like, I just drafted a tight end in the 8th round who just got 107 targets or whatever it was, 100 plus.
100 targets at tight end, bro.
Right.
Like, how good does that feel in the 8th round?
And then the most on-brand Arthur Smith move of all time happens.
So just
I don't know who it was on Twitter, but someone joked about the tight end thing and drew up a formation with 4 tight ends with Fryermuth, Jonnu. Was it with Darnell Washington and DK Metcalf as the 4th one?
Yeah, and he was doing that before the trade even happened. Like he was showing that it was a 4 tight end set from Arthur Smith.
They run 13 personnel, like 14% of their snaps. That's 8 times more than the league average.
Last year, we talked a lot about I talked a lot about Jonnu Smith, and it was a very rewarding experience for me to say, hey, y'all, this guy's coming. His value is baked into the fact that he has never been the lone guy in the room before. And so his outburst in Miami was simply because he was the only guy in the room. And then now he's once again paired with another tight end, and it's his third go round with Arthur Smith. Stop it. Stop doing this to us. Just retire and go work for FedEx.
Yeah, it's super gross because you have Jonnu Smith, who does have such a unique skill set. Like, when he was in Tennessee with us, we were running jet sweeps and doing lining him up in the backfield and handing him the ball. Like, he has all that, and he's one of the most athletic tight ends in the league in terms of versatility and just being able formation versatility. I mean, he was lined up out wide 20%. Now I'm almost certain that number's going to be less than 5 in Arthur Smith's offense. So it just really sucks. I know they said that he might be the slot receiver, but it just lowered the ceiling it lowered both he and Pat Fryermuth's ceiling so much that it makes you not interested in either one. So you're taking 2 guys off the board with one move, and it's just gross. So now they're only usable in best ball. And good, I mean, and you have to go Freiermuth because you know he can catch touchdowns, and Aaron Rodgers can throw touchdowns to, to tight ends. I know that sounds like hashtag analysis, but he's really good at throwing touchdowns to tight ends in the red zone. He got Robert Tonyan 11 touchdowns one year. So, yeah, it just really, really sucks, Mike. Yes, I do not feel great about taking him in the 8th round now in your startup. Thanks for asking, bro. Really cool question. I really enjoyed it.
Well, no, I didn't mean to rub.
I've gotten probed on the show, and it's great.
Salty taste in your mouth now, I guess. But I mean,
oh my god,
we're just.
Oh my god.
Let's move on.
I want to provide some levity here, and let's reverse a little bit. I want to point something out that Coach was talking about when he was talking about Calvin Ridley, and the thing that he said was that Calvin Ridley is this year's Terry McLaurin. I want to dive into that a little bit because I've been looking at a lot at Terry McLaurin, and in a league, and I'm pretty sure it was the Grindberg Invitational, I kind of snap drafted him without doing my homework. Last year, he finished as wide receiver 7 in PPR, and that was the first time in his 7 years that he had finished that high, or 6 years. And I looked a little bit deeper into it, and his target share was like kind of similar. He had 3 times over 130 targets, but he only had 117 targets last year. He had a similar reception number. He had been at 87, 77, 77, 79. He had 82 last year. So nothing really changed with Terry McLaurin. Even his yards per target was a little bit lower than his biggest year. His yards wasn't his career season, but his finish was. So what was underlying that biggest finish? And it was that he jumped from an average of 4 or 5 touchdowns per season to 13. So what we're doing is we're drafting Terry McLaurin at wide receiver 30 based on a very, very significant, like 120% jump in his touchdown rate. Yeah. Meanwhile, Calvin Ridley, who's going through something similar, getting a new quarterback who's going to be chucking the ball, and that's going to be his favorite receiver, he's going to be in a very similar situation to McLaurin, but we're drafting him as wide receiver 53. I mean, that is insane. That's insane value. And I look for regression from Terry McLaurin. So as I'm going forward, I'm not drafting him as high as wide receiver 30, but I'm absolutely smashing Ridley in the mid 40s and mid and late 40s.
Yeah, that Ridley pick is one that actually is a glaring gap in consensus into what what we see here. So it's where our viewers are going to get some value. So snatch them up where you can. And Chev, what do you got for us here, bud?
So I would like to ask the question, do you guys think that, I know he's holding out right now, so that's less than ideal, but let's say we get something done before training camp starts or during training camp, and we can get full season Terry McLaurin. He could regress in touchdowns, but would you guys feel comfortable projecting him to gain more targets this year?
No.
Interesting.
His target competition last year was De'Ami Brown and Olamide Zaccheaus. Now he's got Deebo Samuel.
Do you think that? So you think that the target count stays around 117? Because I think it could go to very, very easily go to like 140.
That's pretty much his career average. He has been
117.
Yeah, he to the 130s. Like he has been between 115 and 130 pretty much throughout his entire career.
That's fair. I mean, that's a fair point. I thought that he was going to get there on the back of volume and then catchable target rate, but it just spiked in the way of touchdowns. So now I'm open to the possibility. Well, it's almost certain, that his percentage of fantasy points that are accounted for by touchdowns is going to regress. But we could make up in PPR with sheer volume. But if you guys are against that, then that's something that I'll have to consider as well.
Well, it's obviously not out of the realm of possibility.
Yeah.
It's just like, what is there to indicate that that's the way it's going to be? Because his
Right.
target number went down last year compared to other years. Maybe it was better quarterback play, and he had more touchdowns. But like I said, his yards wasn't his biggest yards season. It wasn't his biggest catch season. It wasn't his biggest target season. So he was right around career averages all the way across the board, except for jumping by 9 touchdowns.
Right.
Hey, so I think I found maybe the spot where Chev might be trying to go, and let's kind of soften the blow of the regression because we see it. We almost know for a fact there will be the touchdown regression. But let's just say instead of 13 down to 6 or 5, it's 13 down to 10, and Terry still clears the 10. We're not going to put it in reverse Terry on his ADP just yet because unrealized air yards, Terry McLaurin was 8th, 757. So let's say we realize some more of those air yards. That could be some of that differential that makes up for that dip in touchdown. So if we want to tell a bullish story, I think what's difficult for us is we know that we want Terry McLaurin on our teams. We just know that we don't want to pay that ceiling price. And I think that's where the beauty is, where if we got Terry McLaurin backloaded in dynasty leagues, we're not worried about that. A similar situation I see this happening in is with Chuba Hubbard. Everybody got to pay yesterday's price. They're going to benefit in keeper leagues and dynasty leagues. But now when you're juxtaposed with in those 4th, 5th round for Chuba Hubbard, in best ball and in redraft, you kind of want to back up, but you understand that you want some Chuba Hubbard on your team. But I see that a lot with Terry McLaurin. So I think it's just a price point of we feel uncomfortable with where he's at ceiling now, but we still see a path where he should pay off, and we somehow still want him on our team, even if it feels like it's going to be a suboptimal pick by process. But all that to say, draft Calvin Ridley.
To me, I think there's a higher probability of him repeating his touchdown totals than him getting more targets. I think that them bringing in Deebo Samuel, Jaden Daniels a year more in tune with his offense, I think they're going to be in more scoring opportunities than they were last year, especially earlier on in the season. So I think those touchdown totals can be very similar to what they were with more opportunities in the red zone and whatnot. So, but we also got to think of what happened last year near the end when Austin Eckler was starting to get a little bit more healthier. They were dumping the ball off a little bit more, bringing in Deebo Samuel too. They may want to tighten things up along the line of scrimmage a little bit more to open up the run game. Lot of variables here. He's a guy that I'm very worried about, but I think there's an opportunity here for him to repeat the touchdown total, maybe not so much the targets.
And here's another one. I'm looking at catchable target rate. So look, I'm just like a lawyer and I'm trying to confirm my bias and, on behalf of anybody who's bullish on Terry McLaurin. Catchable target rate, it's appearing in front of me now. 74% was ranked 24th. So what if with Jaden Daniels, to your point, Mike, there's repetition or near less regression on the touchdowns. The catchable target rate goes up. And then those unrealized air yards are a little bit more realized. We may be able to match just, hey, it can happen back-to-back seasons. Our belief has always been in Terry McLaurin. He's just had a dog water quarterback situation his entire career. So who are we, in a sense, let's ask the question a different way. Who are we to question the fact that Terry McLaurin, he may have been this receiver this whole time, and we only just got him this one time like this, and we think that's all it's going to be. Right, Same thing with Calvin Ridley. So we could psych ourselves into, why shouldn't it just be a print fest again for Terry McLaurin?
Well, I do want to clarify. I'm not saying don't draft Terry McLaurin. In fact, Terry McLaurin is a value. Having had a top 10 finish and being drafted in the 20s, that he still remains a value. It wasn't a big enough year to launch him into like, oh, well, you better get him in the 2nd or 3rd round if you want him. I find Terry McLaurin with a lot of wide receiver 2s. And I will always defer to this is the target leader in the room. So when I'm looking at going with McLaurin or Devontae Smith, I'm still going with McLaurin because he's the wide receiver one and he's going to be a better value than Devontae Smith. Ridley's in the same boat, but even later. So I have a bunch of teams where I'm coming away with Calvin Ridley and Terry McLaurin because they're so highly, their value is great. And then I'm beefed up on running backs and wide receiver ones that I took in the earlier rounds who are just going to be monsters. So nobody's saying don't, listeners, viewers, nobody's saying don't draft Terry McLaurin because he's at a perfect value spot. It's just, I wanted to point out that he had that huge jump, and that's where we're looking at Calvin Ridley.
Yeah, this is the buying point for Calvin Ridley. Jump on it now before he turns into next year's Calvin Ridley, and the price point turns into the Chuba Hubbard situation that coach did so well at pointing out. Guys, what a great show. We did it. Got in here well indeed. And, rounds 9 through 13, we hit some values here, talked about tight ends majority here, but got some really good dialogue there on those wide receivers, especially these later round guys that have, wide receiver 2, steady floors with wide receiver 1 upside weeks here. So I love this, guys. Bigz, do it like you always do. Plug the brand, plug everything we're doing here on the Fantasy Sports Advice Network and the Indroppables.
Thank you all for watching and listening and all that stuff. Let's get this comment section fired up. That's one of our favorite things to do, is to check back on the videos after we've got some views and see what people are laying in the comments. And we're gonna jump in the comments with you. So give us some feedback, all that stuff. Join us next week when we talk about rounds 32 through 38. And I'm kidding. Visit us on fantasysportsadvice.com and buy the merch, like and subscribe, hit the bell, all that call to action stuff. It says right there on the show sheet, call to action. Doesn't, I just made that up. And we hope you win.
Hope you win, folks. Have a great week. See you next.